Okay, so first things first, let's start with this disclaimer. I'm a true crime channel. My videos are for educational purposes and for adults only. I don't do clickbait. I don't do live streams. My videos are pre-recorded videos where I talk about current cases. In this video, I'm talking about the Maddie Soto case. For anyone who may have actually not heard of it, Maddie Soto was a 13-year-old girl who went missing only a few days after her birthday in 2024. It was later discovered that her mother's ex-boyfriend was responsible. And now he's locked up, facing 2 trials, one because of images found on his phone, and one for Maddie's death. Okay, moving on. Now, first of all, before we jump into this video, if you are new to my channel and you like what I'm doing, I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel. I know when I look at my statistics for my channel that there's a lot of people who watch but don't subscribe. You can help me out immensely by subscribing. It just gets my channel seen by more people. The more subscribers I have, the more likely YouTube is to actually recommend my videos to other people. It's one of those things with the algorithm. You have got to jump through hoops if you want to try and get your channel seen. And my goal is to get my channel seen by as many people as possible, because Maddie's not the only one out there needing justice, and to me it's something really important. So the more people that are behind me with this, the better chance we've got of getting justice for all these beautiful children. The second thing I just wanted to say before moving on to this video is a huge thank you for everyone's support. I am just blown away by how supportive and how kind my subscribers are. With all this demonetization stuff that's been happening lately with my videos, it has felt really discouraging, and there are some days when I just feel like I don't feel enthusiastic about hopping on and making a new video, because the thought of doing all the work and then uploading it and having to delete it and edit it and then re-upload it, which has been, just about the norm lately, is discouraging. So when I have people giving me all these kind comments, telling me keep going, telling me we love your content, that's what helps me get in and come back and do the next video. So thank you so much to everyone for your support. Now, let's get back to this video. This is the video interview that was done with Jen on the 1st of March. We've watched part 1 already. We've got Detective O'Malley, who's basically leading the interview, and Jen, who seems to constantly be slipping up and letting things out that she possibly shouldn't be letting out because they're not in her best interests. Now, before I jump into this, I just want to remind people, take a break when you get too overwhelmed with Jen. You don't have to listen to this all in one bit. When I do these reviews where I'm looking at these interviews, to be quite honest, I take multiple breaks through the day. I also have things on my desk that I can fidget with while I'm working to also help me get through. And I recognise that I'm not the only one that is really triggered by Jen and wants to probably choke her or more. Need to be careful because we're still only 5 minutes into this video and I don't want to be demonetized again. So yeah, just remember to look after yourself first. You could always come back. I'm not deleting these videos, so if you don't watch them in one go, that's well and good. The other thing I wanted to comment on is I quite often see people who are, I guess, so triggered by Jen that they make multiple comments. And then occasionally someone will apologise for making multiple comments on my video. Let me help you out with this. First of all, when I'm watching other people's videos, it is not uncommon for me to leave multiple comments. So I know how you feel. Sometimes you do feel a bit self-conscious about it. But here's the thing. Comments are gold on YouTube. One of the major things that helps a channel with the algorithm is when you comment. So I have multiple subscribers who leave multiple comments on my videos. And that's fantastic because you are helping me get my videos further out into the algorithm. So please never apologise for making multiple comments, because for starters, it helps me, but also we're all sharing this experience, and this is a fantastic community, and it's a great way to get your feelings out, get your frustrations out, and there's always going to be, even if I haven't had a chance to read your comments, there's always going to be someone who reads your comment and agrees with you. So I think on that note, we should probably just get on with this interview.
What did you guys do Tuesday? Or just you? You guys, if you're not together, you're not together. What's the timeline on Tuesday?
Tuesday, he slept. I woke up early and started making phone calls to like the national hotline for missing and exploited children. I called the number that the sheriff's office had given me to see if they had any information, and they let me know that she was like the like the, what did she say she was? I don't remember what she said her position was, but she had just gotten into the office and was just starting to work on it, so she didn't have anything new for me. Her name was Bonnie Mitchell. I remember that. She asked me to send her some photos. The National Exploited Children's Hotline place asked me for photos as well.
Okay, are we missing a early interview with Jen? Like a early body cam footage or something? Because she's basically saying she's rang Nick Meck. Because that's where I just looked up Bonnie Mitchell, and she is like Nick Meck, Namus, that sort of thing. Which I think Namus and Nick Meck are connected, aren't they? And she's saying that the detectives told her to do that, which I think is the only reason she would do it. Otherwise, I mean, the woman's such a slug. Why would she bother otherwise? But it's interesting that she's basically saying that she's rang the hotline and been asked for a photo. And then she's basically said the same hotline again and said they also asked me for a photo. So I'm a little bit confused there. I think she's possibly a little bit confused, and she possibly has rung two different organisations. But I think Namus actually are connected with Nick Meck anyway. So I don't see why you would need to ring both. I would imagine that you just ring one and it's all put onto the same system. I'm not sure with that. I've not dealt with that before. Let me know if you know. But definitely seems to be, from the way Jen is talking, from the fact that she knows the name of the person involved with adding these cases and stuff, seems to me she's actually being honest here. But the disclaimer for me here is I strongly suspect that she did it because this is what she was told to do.
I think at this point, um, I had asked my friends and family to start contacting news outlets to try to get as much attention on this as possible. Um,
I don't think she really figured out where that was going to fit into her timeline, did she? Because she claims that she got home after reporting Maddie missing and contacted Fox News. And now she's saying that she got family members and friends to start contacting media outlets. I'm just wondering because she's only dealt with, what, 2, maybe 3 media outlets. There was the Spanish one, and I can't remember the name, Fox, and one other. So if families were contacting media outlets and she's claiming she did it the night before, I suspect that she actually didn't do it the night before.
uh, I had a lot of phone calls coming in, and I was picking all of them up, hoping that any of them could help me. But it ended up being news reporters or people who had seen my phone on my phone number on a flyer and was trying to give me suggestions. Um, Somebody letting me know that they took flyers all the way to Orlando International Airport and posted them all over the place in case she was being trafficked. They suggested that I go to Amtrak and Greyhound. I had my sister making all these runs for me. I didn't leave the house to do any of this.
Stephanie's still asleep?
Yeah.
So a few things here. First of all, I think we do need to just observe how wonderful community is when a child is missing. She's saying that her phone number was out there on flyers and people were contacting her, trying to be helpful and making suggestions. These are people who were genuinely concerned about this missing child and who clearly had no other way that they could help. Maybe they didn't live close enough by, maybe they didn't have the physical ability to search. So what did they do? They wanted to offer suggestions, try and cover ways to find this child. Now, the way Jen's talking, to me it sounds like it was all a big imposition to her. She doesn't sound like she was overly enthused with the fact that the media were contacting her. It's hard to tell, it's hard to gauge what she thinks about all the people that were phoning her with suggestions. But how interesting is it that she's like saying all these suggestions and she's like, so I got my sister to go do that. I'm sorry, but your child is missing. People are offering suggestions that you think are so worthwhile that someone needs to go and do those things that have been suggested, but you don't want to do it yourself. There's definitely something wrong with that picture. I mean, you would think that most mothers would just jump to it and go, okay, well, these are great suggestions. I'm going to go and I'm going to take flyers to every single bus station that I can get to, every single rest stop that I can get to. Not Jen, no, she's just going to get her sister to take control of that. Something else that is really telling for me, and which people have just gone, oh well, you know, that's Stefan. This is a mother whose child is missing. She should be really concerned. She should be wanting to do everything possible to try and find her child. And her on again, off again boyfriend is upstairs asleep. Now, if I was in that position, I would be hauling him out of bed and saying, you got dressed, get off your ass, get out there and start doing something to help me find my child. But apparently that never crossed Jen's mind. We never hear anything from her along the lines of her being frustrated that he was just sleeping the day away while her daughter was missing. Never a concern. That's a huge red flag to me.
Eventually, reporters come to the house and do an interview, and at this point, Stefan was awake. I did an interview with them, and then Stefan was crying in the background, and I said, Stefan, do you want to do the interview? You can if you want. And he sat in front of the camera and did an interview where he cried.
Again, speaking to this notion that some people have of Jen being the victim, Jen being targeted by Stearns. Well, I think she still was targeted, but she allowed it. But, you know, poor innocent Jen, she's a victim in all this. The way she's speaking there about Stefan, she's infantilizing him. I asked him, do you want to do an interview? The tone of her voice. If you didn't know who Stefan was, you'd think she was talking about her teenage son. And this isn't the only time she speaks of him like that. To me, this is one of the many, many signs that Jen had a heck of a lot of control in that relationship.
Do you know which news outlet that was with? I know there's a video on Fox 35 where
With
you
him
guys
sitting-
appeared to be on like a webcam.
Yeah, that was Zoom. He was sitting in the
Zoom.
background for me.
Okay.
I know
But
that
you
one.
had in-person interviews with reporters?
Yes.
You,
I want to say it was Channel 9.
okay.
Yeah, Channel 9.
And he spoke to them?
Yes.
Okay.
And he ugly cried in front of the camera too, so he was fucking fake sob crying.
Okay, so first of all, the being out of sync, the audio with the video, that's how it came from, like when I did the FOIA request and it came in like that, which is frustrating because it makes it harder. I would love to be able to zoom in, but I find it distracting trying to listen to someone speak if it doesn't match up visually. So I'm not going to do any zooms now while the audio doesn't match. So she pulls out the ugly crying again this time for Stefan. The thing is, when you look at that interview, what I see is someone whose eyes are bright red because they are totally stoned. I don't see any signs of him actually crying. He's even worse than Jen when it comes to putting on an act. But Jen refers to it as ugly crying.
Are you saying that now, or do you?
I'm saying that now. I didn't
Okay.
think that at the time. At the time, I thought he was truly heartbroken and not that he had done all this shit to her.
Okay, when you look back to Jen's own comments about herself, she's actually giving herself away here. So she's referring to Stefan with the ugly crying and the face sob crying. And now she's saying, I'm saying that because now I know it was fake. So her notion of fake crying is ugly crying, face sob crying. I think there's a little bit of leakage here. I think she has accidentally told on herself and admitted that this story of her driving home after reporting Maddie missing and ugly crying is a fake story. Because she's just equated the exact same thing to an act with Stefan. It also shows you just how manipulative she is, that she recognises the different ways of coming across with fake emotion. She's verbalising it. She doesn't realise that she's giving herself away and showing her own tactics.
Like, I look back at shit now, I'm just like, he was fucking lying. He was fucking faking. What else has he been lying to me about? I know he's like a master liar and manipulator because he's done it to his parents, and he's told me and shown me the lies he's done to his parents. But I don't know why I never thought, not me.
Okay, I've done these interviews back to back, so I don't know if it was yesterday's video that I was listening to this. But she was adamant earlier with detectives, either in this interview or the one before it on the 28th. One of the ones before it, obviously. She was adamant that she believed he had never lied to her. She didn't think Stefan would lie to her. And now she's turning around and dumping him in it and saying, yeah, I knew he was a liar. But then adding that little, oh, but I didn't think he would do it to me.
The lies are about money, they're about where he's at, what he's doing, what's he...
Yeah, all that.
To his parents?
He's stolen money from his parents. They used to have a few $1,000s hidden in like a closet for emergency fund kind of thing. And during COVID, he stole, like, he wanted RC cars. See, if he wants something, he's gonna get it. No matter what. So, he wanted RC vehicles, the remote control cars. Fancy ones. They were a few $100s. And I'm poor. I know I can't afford it. And he's showing up at home with these things. And I asked him, where are you getting the money from? Because we don't have this money. He goes, oh, my dad. And I said, your dad gave you money? He goes, no, I took some from his closet. And I was like they have an emergency stash? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, he's gonna notice money's missing. And he's like, no, he won't. It's so much money in there, he won't notice at all. I've confirmed with Chris later on that he did notice money, but he never asked his son.
There is a heck of a lot to unpack in that one statement there. First of all, what a catch, hey? This guy who's her on-again, off-again boyfriend, and she's talking about him basically being a liar and a thief. He's stolen from his parents before, and yet, and she's admitted that he lies to them, and yet she's happy for him to share her house. It's like, I'm sorry, leopards don't change their spots. If you know that someone is lying to someone close to them and they are stealing from that someone close to them, then you're kidding yourself if you think that they're not doing it to you also. And the thing is, Jen claims, she's like, don't trust the man. I've learnt to be wary. I've learnt not to trust. And yet she just reels off this stuff about him stealing from his parents with no hint of concern for her own things. But then you get that comment that, to me, is a big red flag. If he wants something, he's going to get it. So is that why you just allowed him, Jen? Seems to me that she was just resigned to the fact that he wanted access to Maddie, so he was going to get it anyway, so why bother fighting it? That is my takeaway from that. The whole idea of, well, if he wants something, there's no point in fighting him over it, so I'm just going to allow it. That's essentially what she's saying. And it really makes me think that she was aware of what was going on with Maddie, but she knew there was no point in fighting it. She probably just didn't care because he left her alone. And she knew that if he wants something, he's going to get it. Now, there's a big thing in here that nobody seems to have picked up on. And it only just dawned on me then, listening to it. Well, no, it has dawned on me before, but I've kind of thought about it, dismissed it, and then it's just finally sunk in. She's talking about these remote control cars. And she's saying that he went and got them and they were expensive. And she said, where are you getting the money from? Because we don't have this money. What does that say to you? Because to me, that says they have a joint account. That says to me that their finances are combined. Which also says to me that she would have to know exactly how much money he's spending on things and how much money he's getting in. I suspect that he probably also had a separate account, but I just find it really interesting, given that they were supposedly on again, off again, that the way she's talking here makes it sound like they had some sort of joint account, which definitely calls a lot of things into question for me. Now, the other thing that she says here that is really telling is that after this incident with the remote control cars, she says that she confirmed it with Chris. This, to me, says that there is definitely a deeper relationship between Jen and Chris, in terms of she was quite willing to dob Stefan in to Chris. She was clearly quite willing to discuss Stefan behind his back with Chris. To have that level of relationship, that's just not like someone you know. That is a deeper kind of relationship. One where she trusts that she can share these things with Chris because she knows what sort of reaction she's going to get from him. And it is basically, what she's describing here is allies. They were allies, basically, I guess, against Stefan. Which makes me wonder just how much was going on between her and Chris in terms of conversations, etc., after Stefan was arrested. And also while Stefan was asleep during the day after his trip to Northport. And it certainly makes me think that Chris definitely was far more involved with this cover-up than what he would like us to think. Now, you can tell from the way she's talking, it's also a power thing for her. This is giving her extra power over both Chris and Stefan. She's controlling their relationship by basically running to Chris behind Stefan's back and dobbing him in. I mean, what we're hearing here is someone who is actually a extremely manipulative person. If she is in any way a victim to Stearns, the only way that would be is because she has allowed it. And I know that there's going to be people out there who have been genuine victims and may feel triggered by me saying this and think that I'm blaming victims. What I'm actually saying here is it's not that situation with Jen. She has on multiple occasions, this is just one of them, basically admitted that she knows exactly what Stephanie's like. But she accepts it. Now, obviously, for Jen, she only accepts things that suit her. So, it suits her to allow Stefan to do the things he does, in her words. She just lets him. So there's a huge difference here. She's not a real victim because she sees quite clearly what is going on here. She is allowing herself to be part of this whole scenario. I'm not sure if I've explained that quite adequately, but what I'm trying to say here is she's not an innocent victim. She is well and truly in control of the situation here.
But I let him know, yeah, he was robbing you and just buying himself toys. He's also lied. Most recently, he lied to his parents about where he would be. He told them he would be at his friend's house playing video or board games or something like that, but in reality, he came all the way to Kissimmee to hang out with us.
Okay.
The fact that she is so calm here while she's talking about Stefan lying to his parents indicates to me that she doesn't really see lying as anything serious. Which, you know, is clearly the case because how many times does she lie in these interviews? She lies more than she actually tells the truth.
But you guys were together Wednesday? After all the interviews, did you stay Wednesday? Would you? I know
Yes.
we had some detectives go meet you guys Wednesday, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Were you guys in the house together until detectives came?
Yes.
What kind of happened after detectives came?
Do you feel like everything starts to get blurry?
Oh, I get it. Trust me. We've been in this
just because-
office for like 3 days straight.
Yeah, so I just don't remember what day I had conversation with you guys.
Tuesday night, Orange County detectives came out there because I ended up coming out Tuesday night.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember seeing me or not that night.
Okay.
That was the first night we were at the apartment into the nighttime.
Yeah, is that when you guys shut down the house for forensics?
Yes.
Okay. So
Tell us about that.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't blame her for being confused here because I think they were actually trying to ask her about Tuesday, not Wednesday. Because she's like, they're saying, after you spoke to detectives. Now, as far as Wednesday goes, when they spoke with detectives was when detectives came and drove them to the office, and then Stefan was arrested after his interview. So I think what they were trying to ask about here was Tuesday, because Tuesday morning you had Detective Hunt go and interview Jen at around lunchtime, and there was also, I think, Detective Tagler interviewed Stefan probably around similar timing. So that was the 27th, that was the Tuesday. So the detectives have basically here got the days confused, which has confused Jen. So I don't blame her. Now they are homing back in on, well, they're talking about Tuesday night when the place was locked down. So I think now they're going to clarify and ask about Wednesday.
So earlier that day, I think Detective Hunt came, or somebody came, and asked Stefan for his cell phone. If he would willingly give it up so that they can look at it, or if they would need a warrant. And I remember him saying, should I have asked a warrant? Should I have... And I'm like, no, if you've got nothing to hide, give him your fucking phone. And, I think we hung out in the house for a little bit, and then when you guys came in the evening, and you guys told us to wait outside, and we waited in my car.
So she's essentially just buried the period of time that they were asking about. What do I mean by that? They were asking about that period of time between when they did the interview at like 12 o'clock and the next lot of interviews, which was Stefan at around 7. And they want to know what they did during that 7-hour period of time, 6 or 7 hour period of time. And she has completely skipped over that. She talks about the Detective Hunt interview, but then she gets that confused with Detective Tagler taking Stefan's phone, because Stefan's phone was taken at about 8 o'clock in the evening after, or at the end of the Detective Tagler interview. So she's basically skipped around and merged those two interviews together and completely left out whatever it was that they did between when Detective Hunt left and when Detective Tagler came and did the interviews. So there's like a 6-hour gap in their timeline. Is it intentional? I mean, I would imagine that the days would blur together, but it just seems interesting that she's got the phone being taken during that sort of lunchtime interview, when clearly at 8 o'clock it must have been, I mean, it was winter then, so surely it must have been dark by then, or getting dark. But not only that, she knows that the discussion about his phone, which we're going to get to in a minute, occurred while they were sitting in her car. Meaning she knows that occurred after the townhouse was locked down in the evening. So I don't know if she is just muddled from tiredness. She's had a lot of interviews, and I think her and Stefan had also been hitting the recreationals quite a bit. So it's also possible that her brain was muddled from that. But she's not answering their question, and she's hiding a huge chunk of the timeline. My personal thoughts are that Stefan probably slept all day that day, aside from when the interviews occurred with Detective Hunt, and knowing what Jen's like, she probably did the same. So she's probably just trying to avoid admitting the fact that on the Tuesday, the day after reporting her daughter missing, that they basically just sat around and did nothing. And of course, it's also possible if her and Stefan did sleep between when Detective Hunt was there and when Detective Tagler turned up in that 6-7 hour period, then that bit of period of time probably is gone in her head because she was asleep, so it doesn't exist, if that makes sense.
He started getting very anxious and very panicky, going, I want my phone back. I want my phone back. And I said, listen, at this point, it's their phone. It's theirs for fucking ever. I don't give a shit. We will buy you a new phone. It doesn't matter anymore. Whatever they need, they need. Like, let them look at it.
So, again, first of all, we once again have confirmation that she was the one controlling the relationship here. He was having a meltdown over his phone, apparently, and she was playing the mother role. Let them have it, don't make a fuss. I can't help wondering, though, if that was basically inspired by the knowledge that he had reset his phone twice. Because we now know, I had originally thought when I saw that he did that second reset and that it occurred at like midnight, until we got that body cam footage, I had thought, okay, well, he must have done that while she was asleep. But now we know that the detectives or the officers turned up about 5 minutes after he did that factory reset, and the pair of them were well and truly awake, just slightly toasted. So she was present both times that he reset his phone. So her basically being adamant, like, just give him the phone, it doesn't matter, based on the fact that she knows the phone was reset, isn't making her some sort of hero. I think the pair of them had the belief that it didn't matter handing over the phone because he'd done a factory reset. They both knew that phone had been factory reset. I'd imagine they both believed there was nothing to be found on the phone. But here's the other thing. Now, I have done the read-through of the recent documents from the state, which are the rebuttal of the defence's attempt to have the phone evidence and the Google evidence thrown out. One of the arguments made by the defence team was that Stefan wasn't told that he didn't have to hand over his phone. But right here, this is one of the instances that I referred to where it is blatantly obvious that he knew that he did have a choice. That's why he's debating it with Jen and saying, should I have not given them the phone? Now, Jen's response here with the detectives, you could think of it as she's once again showing condemnation of Stearns. But don't forget, at this point in time, Stearns has been arrested. He's been locked up. And she's been told about the images on the phone. So how are you going to convince people that you knew nothing about those images? By giving this story here. That she made it clear to him that there's no reason to be fussing over giving over the phone. Make it sound like she had no idea that there was not anything on the phone and that she just thought he was a fool for making a scene.
And he's like, I just want my phone back. And I'm just like, are you trying to make yourself more suspicious? Because, like, you're if you were to go demand your phone back right now, that would look suspicious as fuck. Like, what are you doing? I'm thinking he's just getting impatient because he's bored and wants to play on his phone. And at one point, he takes my phone to start playing with it. I give it up and I said, "Here, play on my phone, have fun." Because I think from my phone he was trying to log into his emails, but he couldn't because you needed like two-factor authentication from your own phone. And I'm just like, "What are you trying to look at?" And he's like, "Oh, my shipments, my packages." He's addicted to buying shit.
They say that to be a good liar, you need a good memory. She has basically already said that she doesn't know what was on Stefan's phone because they respect each other's privacy. And she never looked into his phone or at his phone. But what she's saying here is essentially saying that she was watching Stefan while he was trying to get into Google accounts. She was so aware of what he was doing that she realises that the issue he was having was that it was asking for the two-step authentication thing, which he couldn't do because he didn't have his own phone. Does this sound like someone who respects the privacy of their sometime partner in terms of what they have on their phone? Not at all. I think part of this story, of course, is her once again trying to distance herself from what Stefan's done. Plain dumb. But behind all that, she is once again infantilizing him, acting like she's the mother, and definitely speaking about him in a way that clearly indicates that she thinks she's better than him. She thinks she's more intelligent than him, and clearly thinks she's more evolved than him. But honestly, I can't help thinking that this is not how the conversation went down, and that basically she's saying this to impress detectives, to convince them that she's innocent, essentially.
That's another thing. Me and his dad couldn't figure out where Stefan was getting money from to buy stuff since he's been unemployed the last 2 months, but he's constantly buying himself packages, buying himself things off of Amazon, buying himself things off the line.
Is this stuff you can confirm, or you think he's doing this?
What?
Buying packages.
I can confirm because I am linked to his Amazon account.
Okay.
And his parents can confirm whatever UPS packages or whatever he's getting at home. But I'm linked to his Amazon account. If you guys have my phone, you'll see whatever shipment. I think most recently I did like birthday party. If you see birthday party stuff, that was me. But everything else, him. He's constantly buying stuff and he doesn't have money. He keeps saying he's got money in his savings, but me and his dad call bullshit because he hasn't had. When he lived with us, he was struggling. His dad was helping him pay his bills, paying his rent, paying his gas, paying his insurance. Stefan was helping us, supporting us by buying food and all that stuff. But I don't know what he did with the rest of his money, and I don't know where he's getting money from now.
Okay, I honestly think, based on the tempo of her speech, based on the sense of urgency in her speech here, that she is basically trying to dump him in it to avoid being caught out over something herself. There is this almost desperate sound to what she's saying here. And she's suddenly speaking a lot faster than with any of the other times we hear stuff. She is determined to dump Stefan in this as deep as she can while coming out smelling like roses. Now, here's something that I find interesting. She's already made that comment of where are you getting the money from, because we don't have this kind of money, which made it sound like they had some sort of joint account. Now she's saying that, well, their Amazon accounts are linked. Well, couldn't you then check to find out what the payment account was for all these things that he's buying? Surely if you... And she's like, sounds like, she's having this conversation with Chris. Once again, going behind Stephen's back, turning Chris into an ally. She's controlling the situation. She's controlling the relationship between Chris and Stephen. But here's the thing. What she's conveying here is that she didn't believe that Stephen was doing the right thing here, that there was something else going on that she's blissfully unaware of. But wouldn't you then, if it is something that is such a concern, wouldn't you actually, since you have a combined Amazon account, have a look at the payments and figure out where those payments are coming from? It just doesn't ring true to me. To me, she has to know where his extra money is coming from. If their finances are that intertwined, she has to know.
You were telling us that he was trying to log into
He's
his
trying.
emails.
So he's
on
trying to
your
log
phone.
into his emails on his phone, and I said, two-factor authentication. You can't do anything. You're just gonna have to wait till you get your phone back. What else?
Now, we get the sigh, and then we get a long break. Now, that could signal that she's about to say a lie. But in this instance, I think it signals that she has additional information that she's not going to give, hence the pause. It's sort of like in her head, the information is that next bit of the story is still working itself out, but she can't say it out loud. And I strongly suspect that what is going on here is that the natural progression from him having her phone, being unable to get into his Google accounts because of two-step authentication. What is the natural progression in this story? Stephen went to Northport and logged onto his Google accounts at his parents' house. So here, where she's pausing, after discussing him trying to get into his Google accounts and the two-step authentication and everything, I can't help thinking that in her head, the progression of this story is, and so that's why he went down to Northport.
We waited in the car. I think at this point, when I noticed that forensics was locking down the house and you guys said we couldn't come back, I told him to call his dad. Because I had a feeling y'all knew something and it was going to come down on him. And I'm just like, they're focusing on the wrong person. They have the wrong person. In my head, I'm convinced you guys are that you had the wrong person. I wanted to think that he was good.
And then, after this long pause, what does she bring up? Calling Chris in to help. So the progression here in the story is there was this dilemma because Stefan wanted to get into his Google accounts. There's a pause. Something is omitted from the narrative here. And where does she pick it back up? Well, bugger me. Bringing Chris into the equation. Well, we know that bringing Chris into the equation meant that, for starters, Stefan had a new phone. But also, and I know in the jail calls, and even I at that originally thought, okay, Chris maybe isn't as guilty as I originally thought. But can we just acknowledge here that part of this whole Chris coming up to Orlando to help them out included Chris disconnecting the cameras, the outside cameras, with this story about, oh, we're changing providers, and oh, the modem's on the floor in my office now. And also Chris saying that as he left, he discovered that the keypad for the front door was no longer working. This is just far too coincidental, if you ask me. So I do think that Chris was involved with the cover-up. And I do think that the pause there was information that was left out. Basically, he couldn't access his accounts, so we had to put things in place so he could go to Northport and do so.
Before we get ahead of that, what is the conversation like between you two when you're in the car? Because y'all were in there for a good while we were trying to figure things out at your apartment complex or your condo. What's the conversation like inside that car?
I'm trying to think back to what exactly we were talking about. I know I remember late in the eve, like when you guys let us know we couldn't come back, and I called his dad, or we called his dad. I started saying to him, like, I think they're focusing in on you. Like, we need to call your dad, and I think we need to get you a lawyer. I feel like they're focusing on the wrong person, and he kept saying the same thing. He kept repeating what I was repeating. That they're focusing on the wrong person. They're wasting time there.
So her saying they're wasting time is, I think, the closest she comes to actually talking about Maddie. The detective has asked her what her and Stefan were talking about while they were sitting in the car all that time. Not once does she say, we were talking about Maddie. We were talking about what might have happened, where she could be, what could be our next move. No, the conversation was all about Stefan. The conversation was all about they were looking at the wrong person, and we need to protect Stefan. But even still, they were sitting in that car for several hours. So is that all they spoke about? Making sure that Stefan was protected? I mean, I guess we can expect that, yes, he would have been panicked about being unable to access his Google Drive, and so he probably was spending quite a bit of time on Jen's phone trying to get in. So there probably was a large portion of time spent on that, but not several hours spent on that.
How did he feel when you said he needs a lawyer?
He didn't believe me. Like, when I told him, like, don't you see forensics is closing down the house? They fucking know something, or there's something, like, they know something. Something's happening. They wouldn't be locking down the house this way if they didn't have suspicions of something. But I wasn't thinking, I don't know why I wasn't thinking him. Like, I was just like, no, they've got the wrong guy.
Okay, but Jen, clearly you were thinking him. See, here's the issue with I have with her talking about all this concern of them locking down the house and everything. She's saying that she decided they needed to get a lawyer for Stefan because she could see they were locking down the house. She could see that they were focusing on Stefan because they were looking at the house and locking it down. Jen lives there too. And yet she doesn't indicate at anywhere here where she felt angry or upset that they were looking at her house and maybe they were looking at her. There's no mention, no thought here of what if they think I'm somehow involved. It's all on Stefan. Which to me says she knows Stefan's the culprit. She knows that of all the people in the house, since they are locking down the house, he's the one that needs a lawyer. Not both of them. If you were innocent and you believed your partner was innocent and your child was missing and suddenly detectives were locking down your house, wouldn't you be thinking, if you were someone who was thinking, I need to get a lawyer, wouldn't you be thinking you need a lawyer for both of you because you don't know who the target is? Jen knew who the target was. That's why she said they needed to get him a lawyer. She wasn't concerned about herself.
He just kept saying that they have the wrong guy, that they're focusing on the wrong person, and that we're wasting time, and we call his dad. We tell his dad to come down here, and his dad did come down here and met us at a hotel. That was another thing. I don't have that much money. I live off of disability. I couldn't afford to put us up on a hotel. Like, when you guys said that we couldn't return, I was like, I didn't know where to go. I was trying to think if any family member would have a spare room or anything like that, and not that could take the three of us, or when I say three of us, I mean him and the dog. And I know at my mom's house we wouldn't have been welcome. My mom does not like Stefan. She's never liked Stefan. So I knew that our only option was to go to a hotel, but I couldn't afford it, so we called Chris.
Okay, so I thought you said that the reason you called Chris was because you needed to get a lawyer for Stefan and you thought that they were looking at the wrong person. So that you needed Chris to help. And now you're claiming that the reason you called Chris was because you couldn't afford a hotel room. Here's the thing, we know that they could afford a hotel room because the account we have from Chris, which obviously could be verified, so why would he lie, is that they had already checked in when he got there. They paid for their hotel room. They also paid for the dog. And then he reimbursed them the cost of having the dog in the hotel room. So what purpose does it serve for Jen to say this out and out lie?
And and Chris met us at our hotel by Disney
Okay.
off of Western Way, and that's where we went. We got there pretty late. We checked in. I used the restroom, and I was getting ready for bed, or laying down in bed probably around 3:30, 3:45 in the morning, and I fell asleep. Stefan was already asleep at this point.
Did you go straight to sleep when you got in, or just kind of drifted off as you were falling asleep? Like you went to the bathroom and he goes straight to bed?
He was already in bed before I went to the bathroom.
Okay.
I was on my phone for a little bit. He was laying in bed snoozing. I went to use the restroom. I was in the restroom for quite a while because I had like a terrible cell. When I came back out, he was asleep. At least I thought he was asleep. But
His dad stayed with you guys?
not in the hotel room. He stayed in a different room on the same floor.
Notice how all of a sudden Jen has to actually add times to her narrative. When they're in the hotel room, she went to bed or fell asleep at around 3:30, 3:45. Now you may have noticed as she's saying that the other detective started looking at his notes, checking to see what time Stefan left the hotel room, because they have him leaving at 4:35. So Jen is once again creating the I was asleep alibi. I'm going to give you a very specific time so that just in case you do know what time he left the hotel, you can see that I was asleep, so I knew nothing. Of course, we know from looking at the data from the hotel room doors that he was exiting the lobby. He had just exited the lobby to head down to Northport, and there was an event on, there was the door for their hotel room was opened again, meaning that Jen probably was awake when he left. Or at least she woke up 5 minutes after he left and realised he wasn't there.
Okay.
The following morning, I wake up, I think around 9 o'clock in the morning, and Stefan's not there. And I remember thinking, he left again without his phone and didn't tell anyone where he was going. That's suspicious as fuck again. Why is he trying to...
Well, we took his phone, so he got a new phone?
He didn't get the new phone until later that day, where his dad woke up, came to our hotel room, and then handed him a phone.
Okay.
Okay, so there's something very, very wrong with her narrative right there. He left again without his phone. That's suspicious as F. She's saying, I remember thinking this. And as the detective pointed out, they had his phone. According to Chris gave him a phone in the afternoon. So why is Jen saying this? There's no way that there's any confusion here. Because she's saying he left without his phone again. That's suspicious as. She's not confusing him being absent from the hotel room with him heading out to run errands on the day that they reported Maddie missing. She's specifically referring to him forgetting his phone again. So it would have to either be that she's telling the narrative of when he went to run errands, or that there was an additional time when he forgot his phone. But not the phone that detectives took. So my question here is, did he have a burner phone that he left behind that time? Was it that Chris did actually give him that phone in the morning and he left, or at 2 a.m. in the morning, and he forgot that and left that behind? Or is this just Jen adding this into the narrative once again to distance herself from everything that Stefan did? Now, I can't figure out what the motivation is here, but it's not her misremembering time part of the timeline. She is far too specific with, I remember thinking. I woke up at the hotel and he wasn't here, and I remember thinking this. That is far too specific to be a mistake. So either there's another phone here that we don't know about, or there's the phone that Chris gave him, or Jen's making this up to distance herself from the timeline. I'd like to know which one you think it might be, or if you have any other options, any other possibilities that you can suggest. I mean, I think we can agree that it's definitely got the cadence and the tone of her made-up narratives. But like I said, the question is, what exactly is going on here? And why does she catch herself after saying it and stop talking? Because it's after she catches herself and stops talking, the detective says, but we took his phone. So what is actually going on here?
And said, here, have this phone in the meantime until you get your old phone back.
Oh, so you're just saying he's out and about with no phone?
Yeah, he's out and about with no phone, so there's no way for us to contact him. There's no way for us to... I didn't know if he even knew how to get back to the hotel. Because I drove that night. He's a little oblivious to when it comes to directions. So I'm just like, is he gonna even figure out how to get here? But he rolled in around 11:15. Rolled in with a cup of Wawa. And said, oh, I'm so sorry, I was just driving around. I grabbed some Wawa on 182 and got lost. I didn't know how to get back to the hotel. But I'm here now. And I'm just like, detectives are about to show up. What the fuck would have happened if they showed up and you weren't here? Like, you would have been a fugitive. Like, what are you doing?
So what I was saying in previous videos about Jen being quite manipulative and calculating, what we've seen in play here is her giving this narrative of, I remember thinking this. Then the detectives question her, well, we took his phone. And she doesn't miss a beat. And now she basically turns it around to, no, I was just thinking that, he's headed out and he didn't have a phone. Not that he didn't take his phone, but, he didn't have a phone. That's right. Let me get this straight. And then she has to over-explain it all. He was barely awake when I drove to the hotel. I didn't think he'd be able to find his way back. All this crap, all this over-explaining after this interesting slip-up over his phone.
And he was just apologetic about not telling anyone where he went.
Why does he need to apologise for not telling anyone where he went? He's a grown man. He can go out, do whatever he likes, whenever he likes. I mean, according to their story, if Jen believes that he had only just dashed out for a Wawa, well, he couldn't tell Chris because Chris had gone off to his office. He couldn't tell Jen because Jen was asleep. So why the need to apologise? It's just another illogical part of the narrative it's been added in for effect. And she probably doesn't even realise how stupid it sounds.
But I mean, he had a Wawa cup and he said he was up at 192.
Yeah, but in reality, I know that he truly took my car in the middle of the night to Northport, Florida, and was down there for an hour and came back. I didn't suspect that at all.
Okay.
I literally thought, I'm like, oh, this man, we were right next to like a a Target. So I'm thinking, oh, he's probably like stress shopping, just looking at stuff. He likes to browse. But it's like, maybe he's in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's the pup playing with his toy in the background. If you can hear a bit of a weird noise, he has a toy fish that makes noises. Now, I honestly do not recall at any point in time hearing detectives tell Jen or Chris exactly how long Stephen was down at Northport for. With Chris, they told him, we caught him on camera at this particular time. With Jen, as far as I can remember, they just asked her, were you aware that he went down to Northport? And she plays dumb. And yet her and Chris are both able to give relatively accurate timelines. Stephen was actually down there for about an hour and a quarter or an hour and a half, I can't remember which without looking. Chris pretty much nails it exactly at one point in his interviews. And Jen's there like, yeah, he went down there, he was there for an hour and he came back. Well, how do you know how long he was down there for, Jen? Because I'm pretty certain detectives haven't actually told you that. But apparently you didn't know that he went down to Northport. And then she goes on about, oh, I just thought he'd gone to the local Target or whatever. Okay, so if you thought he'd just gone to the local Target or whatever, why did you then make a big fuss about him being gone and suggest that he would have been arrested for having gone? Her story is really, really not holding together at this point in time. I think based on the illogical statements that she's making here, and based on the hotel room door being opened 5 minutes after Stephen exited the lobby, I'm going to say that Jen probably did actually know that Stephen went down to Northport.
But I didn't have a car. I couldn't go out looking, right? And also detectives were coming, so I didn't want to leave. Detectives eventually show up. Actually, just we were in the hotel room for a while. He went back to sleep and slept. I took a little snooze for a little bit that morning, and then I got up, and then I went downstairs to the lobby, and I saw Chris. And Chris asked if I wanted some lunch, so we went to the hotel bar and ate some lunch. We brought up some lunch back for Stefan. Told him to eat a little bit. When he woke up, he took like 2 bites.
Again, if you didn't know the context, you would think she was talking about a child or a teenager or someone that was mentally delayed. Because she's saying that they went back to the hotel room. She doesn't say we offered him some food, but we told him to eat. And he ate 2 bites. The fact that she's saying, I told him to eat, or we told him to eat, as opposed to, we took some food back but he wasn't hungry, is again making it sound like, basically, to her, he's just a kid or a teenager.
Then detective showed up. He went downstairs. They let us know that there was a press conference happening, which we already had an idea was going to happen, and they told us they would give us a ride and escort us to the conference here, and that you guys would let us in the back way so that media wouldn't see us. But in reality, now I know that was just to interview guys with us. But yeah, then we showed up here and got separated. Haven't heard from him since. Haven't spoken to him since.
So when she talks about how she thought they were taking her there for the press conference, but they weren't, she laughs. She doesn't actually find it funny. Let's be real about that. I think she's actually masking a bit of anger there. It's more a case of trying to brush off resentment, I think. I'm not sure though, so let me know your take on that. But it's certainly not that she actually finds it amusing. Could just be that she simply doesn't know what the expected reaction is there, because she doesn't want to show that she's annoyed with them. So she goes overboard with that reaction, like, oh, it's funny, even though, like I said, she doesn't think it is. Now, here's where things are typical of Jen. She talks about, you know, we thought you were taking us for the press conference, and then we were separated, and I haven't heard from him or spoken to him since. So essentially, again, her number one concern is Stefan. But it's not that Stefan was arrested. That's not on the radar. Because we're talking about Jen here. And for Jen, what has happened to her is that she's been cut off from Stefan. So the thing that is more important to her is that she hasn't heard from him or spoken to him, because that directly impacts on her. Whereas at this point in time, him being arrested doesn't directly impact on her. Well, it does, in that it means that she hasn't heard from him or spoken to him. But she couldn't care less, really, whether he is arrested or whether he was on the other side of town. The important thing here for her is that she hasn't heard from him or spoken from him. She's lost that connection with him, which is more important to her than the fact that he's been arrested. Basically, she views everything connected to this case in terms of how it directly affects her, not how it affects anyone around her. So like Stefan being arrested, that affects him more than it affects her. But her not being able to speak to him or not having heard from him, that directly affects her.
Have no interest in speaking to him at all. Yeah, that was it then. Then we got interviewed.
Okay, so she claims she's got no interest in speaking to him at all, but do we really believe that? I don't believe it. Now, she does, while she's saying that, shake her head as she's saying it. But then when she finishes saying it, she continues to shake her head. So the body language isn't quite aligning with the language. The fact that she's continuing to shake her head after saying that she's got no interest in speaking with him, I find that questionable. Is she negating her statement here? and forgetting that she needs to stop shaking her head. She says it in a really calm voice too. Now, given what she's been told that he did, you would expect to see some sign of anger in her voice or in her body language. There's nothing. She's not using her hands for, like, as descriptors. Her hands are just sitting there in her lap. You don't see a change in her facial expression. And the way she's speaking, you wouldn't think that it was any big deal. Could just be like, oh, I've got no interest in seeing him at all right now, because I'm busy reading a book. Not, I've got no interest in seeing him at all because of what he did to my daughter. There's no emotional connection happening at all. And then she says very quietly, and then we were interviewed. I think that was just an afterthought. She wasn't sure what to add there, and that's why it was so quiet. Because she's just had her big grandstanding moment and suddenly remembered that actually that's not what she was being asked. She was being asked what they had been doing on that particular day.
What have you done since? Like, where did you go back to the hotel? Did you stay somewhere else?
No. So after the interview and all that stuff, Chris took me to my sister's house. I've been at my sister's house ever since.
Okay.
Yesterday I went out for a little bit to go to Target to try to take my mind off of things. I went to Target to go get myself a toothbrush and deodorant, things that I didn't have because I left the house so last second. I also went to my ex-husband's wife's mom's house. Complicated, but we're all friends.
So,
Yeah.
So, on one hand, she's been staying at her sister's house, she says. And then she talks about going out, and she'll come back to that, the talking about going out to Target and stuff. And then she says, I went to my ex-husband's wife's mother's house. Well, okay. This is someone who has an extremely large family. She has her father around. She has her mother nearby. I don't know how many sisters she's got, but she's got like step-sisters and full sisters. She's got uncles. And yet she goes to someone who is pretty much 3 degrees of separation from her. Her ex-husband's wife's mother's house. That is as odd as it sounds. So why go there? I suspect because she couldn't face her family. And also because she probably needed an audience that couldn't spot when she's faking emotion. I think she intentionally went with someone who wasn't as close to her to try and get a bit of sympathy while hiding out from her family.
They consoled me. They just kept me company. They made lunch. Then I went back to my sister's house, and I've just been pretty much there ever since that. When I went to Target, I decided, like, oh shit, I shouldn't be out in public. People could recognize me. It can either be good or bad what people could tell me. I've already had people recognize me in my community, and dealing with people's heavy emotions and them coming to me and crying and telling me they're so sorry and how they feel is so heavy because like it's I just have to kind of stand there and take their emotions and like I don't know, it's so heavy.
Okay, so first of all, let's address the I shouldn't be out in public because people might recognise me. That sounds like someone who's got something to hide. Someone who feels guilty, whether or not she recognises that she's feeling guilty. That is not the words of someone whose child is missing and would actually probably appreciate a bit of sympathy from people around her. Her big concern here is being recognised. Well, surely, if it gave you a chance to talk about the fact that your child was missing, is it a bad thing to be recognised? Apparently for Jen it is. And then what she says after that is just phenomenal. Dealing with people's heavy emotions, them telling me how they feel. She can't cope with that. And people telling her how sorry they are, or whatever she said it was. That, to me, sounds like the words of a true sociopath. She doesn't understand empathy. To her, it's actually a burden that these people are showing her how sad they are for her that her daughter's missing. But she doesn't see that as what it is. She sees people showing emotions and she doesn't know how to respond, so that's a burden for her. Now, we could say, yeah, she's narcissistic. We could also maybe say, well, sometimes people with autism struggle to understand, to read people properly in terms of emotions and stuff like that. But the way she's saying it to me, well, personally, first of all, I've not seen any signs that would indicate to me that I think she has any autism, anything like to do with autism spectrum disorder. When you combine it with all the other things we've heard from Jen, honestly, it sounds like a sociopath. She doesn't want to be in public because she doesn't want to deal with people's emotions, even though those people are showing their emotions because they're trying to demonstrate to her that they care about the fact that her daughter is missing. But I guess because she is quite possibly incapable of empathy, she doesn't know how to recognise it when she sees it.
When I realized that these were the interactions I was having in public, I'm like, I need to stay at home because I just can't carry anyone else's emotions right now. I have my own to deal with, like my own. I don't want my own mental health suffering right now, or for me to spiral and end up back being hospitalized.
So often, I hear things come out of Jen's mouth, and I think to myself, has she forgotten that her daughter is missing? Because here she's telling the detectives that right now her number one priority is her mental health, and she doesn't want to be hospitalised again. Well, you're supposed to be a mother. That means that everything else right now should be put aside, and your only concern should be over the well-being of your daughter. Where is your daughter? Is your daughter still alive? If she's still alive, is she okay? Because she doesn't have her asthma medications with her. Not that that concerns you, because you've never brought that up. Is she somewhere where she's comfortable? Is she having to sleep alone? Because according to you, she doesn't like sleeping alone. None of those things are a concern for Jen. Her number one concern is not being recognised by the public and making sure that she looks after her mental health. Because that trumps everything.
So when did you meet Steven or Stefan?
I met Stefan in 2017. We both worked for Eco Homes, a real estate company. I did appointments, and he worked in the office doing like warranty work. We met as coworkers. We became really good friends. We were best friends for like a year. And then eventually I asked him if he wanted to hook up, and he said sure.
So I think that there's two reasons here why she says we both worked for Eco Homes instead of we both worked for his father. First of all, I think Jen has been defensive in terms of the fact that she was dating a complete utter loser. And he sounds like far less of a loser if he was working for a real estate company than if he was working for his father. So it's probably just one of those things, especially when you hear her talking about, he moved back down with his parents because he had a job offer. She doesn't, it degrades her to say that her boyfriend is a loser, essentially. So she's going to reword it and try and talk him up a bit and make him look like a bit less of a loser. To do that, she needs to leave out the part about them working for his father. The other thing that I think is going on here is that in one of her interviews, when she's talking about this particular job with Eco Homes, she does actually mention that she was fired. She blames it on her experience on a date where she claims that that has caused her trauma, and said that it was only a little while after that, so she couldn't work because of that. But I suspect there's probably more to the story, because we know Jen can't hold a job down ever. So it would be rather embarrassing to say that you were fired by your on-again, off-again boyfriend's father. And now, as for this notion that's out there that she worked for a temp company and worked for Eco Homes, show me the evidence of that. Because every time she talks about it, she specifically says she worked for Eco Homes. And of course, as for this whole, we were dating for a year and then I said, do you want to hook up? We were best friends for a year and then I said, do you want to hook up? It just sounds really odd to me. It just sounds more like teenagers who are hanging out and like, hey, let's just hook up. Not we're best friends for a year and we decided to take the relationship further or something like that. It is just a really immature way of describing it. But it also has a bit of a casual feel to it, which of course makes me question their on again, off again relationship. I mean, how serious were they? Because I don't get a sense from either of them that they really give a damn about each other that much. I think it's just a convenience thing, having each other around. They gain something from being around each other. There are benefits. It's not about them actually giving a damn about each other. Maybe on some level they do, but I don't know. I just think it's a really dysfunctional relationship, and I think it was from the very beginning.
And yeah.
You said 17, 18. Did you live in Orlando, Kissimmee? Where were you guys staying then?
Kissimmee.
And did you guys live together in 17?
He technically lived at his parents' house, but he was staying at my house all the time.
Okay. Same house you're in now or a different house?
Wait, I take it back. In 2017, he wasn't staying over my house. It started in 2018 when we started hooking up, and he started sleeping over my house.
Okay.
And what was your next question?
Was that in the current
Yes.
house you live in now?
Yes.
Okay. How long have you lived in that house?
On and off, because at one point we moved close to where his parents live right now. They live in North Port Florida,
Yeah.
Sarasota County. I lived in Port Charlotte, which is Charlotte County, the county right next door. We had an apartment there for like 6 to 8 months. We moved down there because, again, Stefan was promised a job and that fell through. So we supported ourselves in this tiny apartment for a little while until I ran out of funds.
It seems like the common excuse that Jen and Stefan frequently go back to is that he was offered a job and it fell through. We know she said that about the most recent move back down to Northport, when the version we have from Chris was basically that he didn't want to continue to pay rent for his lazy-ass son who was in a job that wasn't really going anywhere and really wasn't earning a great deal of money. So I do take that with a grain of salt when she says he was promised a job that fell through. To me, I would be more inclined to think there was something else, some other reason, and nothing about a job. Now, as for her saying they lived there until she ran out of funds. Really? You're the sort of person that you actually have money saved up somewhere in a bank account? Because I find that unbelievable. I think the translation there was probably, we lived there until I got fired. Hence the running out of funds, because she didn't have the money to pay rent and needed to move back up to Kissimmee and mooch off her family again.
Do you remember what year that was?
2020.
So when did you live in Port Charlotte in 2020?
I don't remember what month I moved in, but I remember moving out in November.
Of 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was some. Maybe like April, May.
That's fine. There's something we can look up if we need to later.
Yeah.
17. In 2017, so 2018.
6.
6.
So we can fill in the gaps there, can't we? He's asked her how old was Maddie in 2018, and her response has been 6. Now, if you remember in another interview, she was asked at what age Maddie was diagnosed as having ADHD, and she pegs us at around, I think she said 5 or 6 or 6 or 7. But we have this ADHD diagnosis occurring at the time that Stefan moved in with them. That to me definitely screams this child should have been investigated more for PTSD. And perhaps that's something that needs to be taken into account when diagnoses are being made. I think specialists do need to ask a few more questions. How long have these symptoms been showing? And if the person isn't like, well, they've always been like this, then my question would be, have there been any changes in her world? Because I think it's crucial when you are making these diagnoses, too often, the diagnosis of PTSD is missed in favour of ADHD because the symptoms are so similar.
At the same time, no. But
Okay.
I've had ex-husbands and ex-boyfriends live in that same house before.
I don't know what the full question was there because there was an entire minute that was redacted in that spot.
You moved to Port Charlotte sometime in 2020 for a few months.
Yeah.
And then you came back to the same house.
After Port Charlotte, I went back to my mom's house for a little while.
Where's that at?
In Hunters Creek, Florida.
Got it.
Even before Port Charlotte, actually, the few months before I was in Port Charlotte, I was living at my mom's house.
With Stefan.
Around March 20, decided he wanted to renovate the house and possibly sell it, so he told us to get out. So March 2020, so around COVID time, like 2 weeks after COVID was announced, I moved in with my mom.
Okay.
And I lived with her for a little bit, and then the Port Charlotte apartment happened. We moved to Port Charlotte, were there for a few months, came back to live with my mom, was there for a few months, and then I decided to move back. That he was moving out and like getting an RV and like living the RV life.
Yeah.
So he needed somebody to take care of the house for him. So I said, yeah, I would do it, of course. So I moved in. I moved into his bedroom, downstairs, the master bedroom. Eventually, Stefan did come.
I listened to her talking about all this moving around, moving in and out of the townhouse, moving in with Yolanda, moving down to Charlotte, Stefan moving in and out. What a horribly unsettled existence for a young child. This is on the heels of a divorce. Because by all accounts, it sounds like when Jen and Stephen were together, that Maddie had some stability until Jen's mental health declined and then Stephen moved out for the sake of his own daughter. So it seems to me that from some point in the marriage between Stephen and Jen, right through up until her last day, Maddie's life was just chaos. It must have been so hard for a child to not know who you were going to be living with, to not know if that person who's moving into your house is just going to move out again a few months down the track, to not know if you're going to move out of that house again sometime and head somewhere new. And now I know that people do move around for work. Families move often. But the lack of stability here comes from Jen and Stefan sometimes living with each other, sometimes not. The introduction of different adults into Maddie's home life consistently. Sure, Yolanda's her grandmother, she's used to her. Juan is a grandfather, she's used to him. But it's about attachments. So moving into Yolanda's house, suddenly this little child has to adapt to her rules, her way of doing things. Gradually makes that adjustment, forms the attachment in terms of this person is now part of my home world, and then she's ripped out of that environment again and has to adapt to a new set of adults in her world, whether it's moving down to Charlotte and it's just her and Jen and Stefan locked up together because it's COVID, or whether it's moving into Juan's apartment. It's just so much instability for this poor little child who was going through so much more in the background. It amazes me when I think about this, that we see all these photos of Maddie and in each one of them she was smiling.
For a few years. It wasn't until like June of last year that I can go upstairs to the guest bedroom upstairs because I just he's not a very clean guy. He's kind of a little hoarder and a collector. So just my house was always a mess and never the way that I wanted it to look. Or the clutter just gave me anxiety. So I asked him to move upstairs and he did.
Okay, so admittedly, when we hear from Deb, she makes it clear that he was a bit of a slob and his room was pretty disgusting. But honestly, when we look at the photos of Jen's room, she wasn't exactly Miss Super Organised. You can see at the back of the room there is a like a little shelving thing for shoes. But where's most of the shoes? In one big pile on the floor. You look at the shelving where she keeps all her food and everything is just shoved in there. How could you possibly find anything easily? Like, has this woman not heard of storage containers? You can organise a small amount of space quite sufficiently without it having to be insane like her bedroom was. Even her cupboard looked like a disaster. So, yes, perhaps he was even more chaotic than that, but I just find it so amusing, her saying that.
And he lived upstairs until until December of last year. And then he moved to Northport, Florida with his parents. But they had promised him a job, but that fell through.
Again, totally different version to what we've heard from Chris. Chris's version is, I moved him back home because I didn't want to pay all that extra money in rent to Juan. And the way he was talking about it, I find that actually believable based on his intonation, all the things he said. I believe Chris, when he says that's why he moved Stefan back home. He also mentioned that he wasn't saying anything about he moved Stefan back home to give him a job. He basically said he was hoping Stefan would get himself a job with a good company. I can't remember what he said, but something along the lines of getting a job with Walmart or something. Something that had better prospects than working at Disney. But in Jen's mind, obviously it sounds far more impressive to make it out that it's someone else's fault. Stefan was lured away from her by the promise of a shiny new job. Not Stefan was made to move back down with his parents because he's such a loser and can't afford to pay his own rent.
So we were in the process of trying to get him to come back up here to get his job back at Disney and for him to move back into the house for a little bit. And I'm not sure long term. I know temporarily I was willing to accept him back.
Was that something out of convenience for him or because you?
A little bit of both. We missed him. And I wanted to help him out, like make it easy, like give him a place, like a base to start at, and then for him to start looking for something else afterwards, on his own. But yeah.
One simple question that was missed here, and it frustrates me, and that is, had you discussed with Maddie about Stefan moving back? Because here's the thing, she says in other interviews, she admits that the relationship between her and Maddie was better with Stefan gone. We hear that Maddie is doing so much better at school with Stefan gone. Everything we hear is basically along the lines of it is definitely in Maddie's best interests to have Stefan gone permanently. Now Jen clearly knew that because of the things she says about the improved relationship, etc. And yet she's adamant that she wants to move him back. And I'd really like to know if Maddie knew that that was on the table, and if so, what did she really think about that? Maybe the reason Maddie was so upset on the Saturday was because there was some sort of discussion of, well, Stefan's coming to stay for a week and we're going to talk about the possibility of him moving back in. Because given what Maddie went through, I would imagine that would be quite upsetting to hear.
You obviously relationship. Talk a lot. Is she a secretive teenager? What is like your kind of day to day with her?
Seriously, Jen, you are asked what your day-to-day with Maddie is like, and you sigh? That says a lot. That was not a sigh of, where do I start? That was almost a passive-aggressive sigh. Like, I'm sorry, but if someone were to ask me, what's your day-to-day like with Mouse, your chihuahua? You wouldn't hear me sighing. I'd probably start with a laugh. Because he is just a complete, utter nutter sometimes. And if I were to ask my sister, well, okay, you went down and stayed in a Airbnb with your daughter for the night so you could go to a concert. How was that? She's not going to start with a sigh. Because obviously she loves her daughter. There is so much negativity from Jen when it comes to Maddie. And it just makes me so wild that he's directing the questioning towards talking about Maddie, and what does Jen do? Straight up, we get a sigh.
I would have said a normal relationship. I asked, she would tell me. I didn't think she was hiding anything from me. I didn't think she was lying to me about anything, but obviously she had secrets.
I mean,
Essentially, she's turned it back on, this is all about Jen. I didn't think she was lying to me. All the me statements. Obviously, she had secrets. In other words, now she's blaming Maddie for what happened. A decent mother at this point in time would be saying, what did I do wrong? I can't believe I missed it. I don't know, there must have been signs. Did she try and reach out to me? All these things. Or what did he do to make her not want to tell me about this? Not Jen, no. She's going to blame Maddie. She's basically calling Maddie a liar. Not taking into account what Maddie was actually going through.
the hindsight, I mean, all the stuff you found out over the past couple of days, we're taking that out of the picture. Your relationship with her.
Okay.
Like
I would
not
say-
looking back saying, okay, I was being lied to. Like up until you found out some things that you've been told, you guys had an open communication relationship. You talk about
Everything.
life.
Yeah. If
What-
anything, she was a little bit more open with Stefan because she told him about a boy she had a crush on,
Okay.
and that his name was, and she described him, and Stefan's like, "Are you aware that she has a crush on a boy?" I said, "No." He's like, "Yeah." She told me his name is, that he's tall and that she likes his fluffy hair.
Okay, so on one hand, kids will sometimes confide in adults that are not their biological parent. There is that whole sense of they don't want to disappoint, or if that biological parent is the person responsible for discipline, they're afraid of consequences, all those sort of things. So, were this a normal relationship and there were no other red flags going on, then I would say, okay, so she feels safer confiding in Stefan. But here's the thing, we have heard all these accounts of inappropriate behaviour towards Stefan. We've heard both Jen and Stefan say that he was also responsible for disciplining Maddie in terms of telling her off when she hadn't tidied her room, etc. We hear a different version from Deb, but I think there was a certain motivation there. Given that we heard from Jen and Stefan, I think that one applies. So it's not like confiding in Stefan meant fear of consequences, because apparently he was also one of the disciplinarians in the family. So for me, it is a red flag that Jen is saying that Maddie tended to confide more in Stefan. This is someone who is in and out of her world. This is someone with whom she is showing inappropriate behaviour. Someone who, and I'm pretty sure Jen would have had to have known, Maddie was communicating with individually, not doing these super long video chats between the three of them. Like, I call BS on that. Jen should have seen this as a red flag. She should have been examining how she was treating her own daughter, and she should have been looking more closely at how Stefan was treating her own daughter. But the way she's talking about it here, it's like it doesn't bother her in the least. Up until the point when she basically is like, oh, well, I would have liked to have heard about her crush. So her concern is not so much about Maddie confiding in Stefan, but more about Maddie telling Stefan about a crush and Jen didn't get to hear about it. For me, this definitely points towards an ambivalence from Jen towards her daughter. She didn't really care that much about Maddie. She was more than happy for Maddie to have a closer relationship with Stefan, because I guess that meant she could just take her meds and veg out and not have to worry about being a mother.
When was this? Do you remember when this conversation happened?
Within the last week sometime, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like within, so we saw, so within a week of that Sunday. I'm not sure if if she had told him via phone chat. It must have been via phone, like phone convert, like we don't FaceTime, we Google Meet.
This woman is so hopeless when it comes to actually remembering her lies. If you recall, she said earlier that in terms of the Google, FaceTiming type stuff, that Maddie never actually had just FaceTime alone with Stefan. It was always the three of them chatting. And now she's talking about this guy that Maddie's got a crush on, and the detectives want to know how she conveyed that to Stefan. When did she tell Stefan that? And Jen's like, well, it must have been in, kind of the last week or so. It must have been in a Google chat or something. Well, if Jen didn't know about this crush, and Maddie told Stefan in a Google chat, well, doesn't that mean that they were actually chatting with each other without Jen around? Or is Jen just like a complete zombie? So she's completely contradicted herself here and admitted that, yes, they do actually chat with each other unsupervised.
The Android
version of FaceTime, yeah. So we would Google Meet often. Sometimes when we get home from school, just talk all day, or sometimes not even talk all day. We would just bullshit. I would be doing my own thing. He would be doing. We're just keeping each other company on the phone. And I think in one of those conversations, she told him that she had a crush on a boy. But I checked those text messages with that boy, and nothing seemed weird either.
Okay, so now she's trying to pretend to be the responsible parent. I checked those text messages with that boy, and then in a really quiet voice, and nothing seemed to be weird with them. I would call that fading facts. It wasn't that she didn't want to say the part about nothing seemed to be weird with them. The whole thing there was an outright lie. We know that because Maddie's best friend actually mentioned in the interview that Maddie had a crush on this guy, and she messaged him and he didn't reply. So, hence the fading facts from Jen. She never checked Maddie's phone to look for messages between Maddie and this boy, because otherwise she would know that Maddie messaged him and got no response.
But how did he? I mean, it could be new. I mean, she sees a guy at school. She thinks it's attractive. He shows her attention. I mean, she's young. How did he take it? Was he like? And I want you to think back before you know things you know now. Like, did he seem concerned about her? Did he seem excited for her? Like she's starting to be a kid and have crushes and everything else. Like,
he seemed happy for her.
Okay.
He's like, yeah, did you hear this? This is super cute. And I was like, oh. I hadn't. She hadn't told me, and I wondered. I'm like, why didn't she tell me? Why did she tell him and not me? And like, I want to know who she got a crush on, but maybe it's because I've told her she had a rule. She wasn't allowed to date for a few years until like I think I had said 16 or something like that. But
I think I had said 16 or something like that. Well, clearly it wasn't an established rule. Because if you actually had a rule about her not dating before a certain age, you would know what age that was because you would have communicated that with her. It would have been something that was a discussion, and it probably would have been something that would have been revisited on numerous occasions. So you wouldn't be so uncertain about what the actual rule was. So once again, Jen is trying to pretend to be the responsible parent when in reality she really isn't. Meanwhile, the irony of, oh, she's not allowed to date, she's too young. But apparently it's okay for her to sleep upstairs in a bed with your ex-boyfriend, who was 25 years older than her, a full-grown adult, 37-year-old man with a 12, 13-year-old girl. Jen makes me so wild sometimes.
On her dating.
So then your relationship with her was open. Obviously, she's a child. She's not going to share everything.
Yeah.
With him, it seems like she has a very open relationship with him. They talk, they hang out. So it'd be okay with you if they went out and did things together outside if you were at work or something?
Now, I really hope that I'm not missing, or that I didn't miss an unredacted version of this from the state, because when they released that for your stuff, you only got it for 10 days and then the link expired. I'm pretty certain I pulled all the interviews and this was not one of them. But there's so many redactions here that it would be so good if we could actually hear this full interview. Especially with this particular part where he's asking her questions about stuff like Stefan being allowed to be alone with Maddie and go places with her. I suspect that the answer to that probably was that he was allowed, given that we have that one instance of Jen apparently asking Stefan to babysit Maddie so she could go to lunch with friends. Also, obviously, we have the Sunday night situation where Jen was still at work and she was quite happy for Stefan to turn up then and be alone with Maddie.
So the living situation with them, I'll be honest, seems weird. It's weird to me. She's got a bedroom downstairs. What's kind of the mindset or the thought process, the communication you've had with Stefan about, she's not going to sleep in her bed, but you guys are going to go sleep in the guest bedroom?
So, originally, the plan was that all three of us were gonna sleep in my bed together.
And I'm not just saying Sunday, I mean like.
Oh, okay.
In the past, too.
So, I had a rule. She wasn't allowed to sleep in his bedroom at all. Like, no sleepovers, no nothing.
And yes, the sigh before she starts saying this is a clear sign that we can expect a big fat lie to come out of her mouth. And again, suddenly Jen is inventing rules. This suddenly seems to be her go-to in terms of when she knows things are wrong or inappropriate, she's suddenly inventing rules.
For a very long time. For years.
Since we're pausing,
Yeah.
what brought that on? Was that like a request of his, like can we sleep in the same bed, request of hers, or you just saying?
Detective O'Malley is definitely one of the standouts for me. He does pick up on these things that are somewhat illogical. Because obviously, who has a rule for the longest time about their child not being allowed to sleep in the same bed with their partner. You don't need that rule because it's not something that's ever really going to come up, is it? So I'm not going to interrupt Detective O'Malley here because I thought he was in fine form.
Me being super paranoid, not to trust anyone, for the longest life, even though he treated her well, I still looked at him on, like side eye, like making sure, like, is that normal? Is this okay? That looks normal. Okay. I wanted to make sure that nothing was happening and that I was missing something, but I was. But
Okay, so we haven't got to Detective O'Malley's bit yet. Major leakage there. Major slip up by Jen. Basically, I wanted to make sure that nothing was happening and that I was missing something. Instead of saying, and that I wasn't missing something. That is definitely leakage. You've heard me say it before, you've no doubt heard other people say it before. The brain doesn't like to lie. So, quite often what you get is either the fading facts, or they may stop midway through what they're saying because their brain stops them because it's a lie, or they may just slip up like Jen just did and admit the truth. I was missing something. Of course, my thoughts are she was intentionally missing something because I truly believe that she did know.
he never requested. I'm sorry. Repeat the question there.
So exactly what I was just saying there about the brain doesn't like to lie. So one of the things you may see is that someone starts saying something, but they don't finish saying. She starts saying, he never requested. Don't forget, at this point in time, she's talking about the upstairs sleepovers. So she's trying to say that he never requested them. She's trying to blame Maddie, and yet her brain kicks in and stops her. And so what does she do to cover for that? Oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? So right there, that answers one of the questions that we've all been asking for quite some time. Whose idea was it? And it sounds like it definitely was Stefan's idea. He was the one doing the prompting and the manipulating. He was the one doing the requesting. Because when she tries to say, he never requested, her brain kicks in and stops her from saying it. So on that note, I think I will leave the long Detective O'Malley bit till tomorrow's video, because we're already up to well over 2 hours on this video, so this seems like a good spot to stop. That said, when I finish this video, I will also be going back to this issue about the phone and the warrantless seizure of the phone, because it seems like even with the documents from the state, there are people who are still feeling a little bit uncertain. So I am going to, as I mentioned before I read through the documents from the state, I had a video set up all to go where I was going to discuss the phone and why it was perfectly legal, and just go through Myra Tagler's version of events. And then we had the document from the state, and I thought, well, I don't need to do that now. But it seems that there's still a lot of people who are a little bit concerned, thanks to, I believe, 2 content creators. I haven't watched their videos, but I know 2 content creators following these documents from the state coming out are still suggesting that the whole case is going to be thrown out. So I think to reassure people, I'm going to go through what I have on this again. So I'll be working on that today. That will be released later on today, which for you guys will probably be like essentially tomorrow morning probably. And then I'll be getting straight back to this one. There is a members video that I'm working on. I have done a post for members discussing it. So if you are a member, go to the community tab and check it out. I will spend a bit of time working on that video today too, but it will take a little while to do. And I think it'll actually be broken up like this also. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you're new, please subscribe to my channel. Also, please hit the like button and leave a comment. Thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.
I've been to